Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Edge of Tomorrow. Episode 2. Chapter 10. Those perfect little lips say stop, but your body is saying something else entirely. Cade murmured roughly in my ear, turning my head so my face was inches from his own. Cade's breath fanned across my face, smelling strongly of mint and something sweet. I had little time to collect my thoughts as fell on my own. Cade's hand rested behind my head, holding me against his. For just a moment, I was completely dazzled. I struggled against his grip. My body pushed closer to Cade, while my mind protested the very thought of him touching me. I was all too aware of Alex's wandering hands. I had never been touched like this before, and my body was marveling in the attention. "Open your mouth, sweetheart," Cade murmured. I had to find some resolve, some shred of control to hang onto. The twins knew the affect they had on me, and knew saying no would be next to impossible. Cade was right, I could say what they wanted but my body showed the truth. My legs parted on their own accord, welcoming Alex's wandering fingers. Cade tugged on my hair, still trying. Another swift bite to the soft flesh of my neck and I nearly opened my lips to let out a muffled whimper. Alex's fingers trailed higher. His touch was brief and gentle, but it did the trick. Cade's tongue tasted incredible as it fought against my own. I could taste the experience on his tongue as he flicked it against my own. My licks and strokes were tentative and shy, while he were demanding and possessive. My willpower was shriveling, crumbling into nothing under the heated touches of the twins. My body reacted to their touch, and the logical side of me bowed in response. Alex's fingers were rough this time, so sweet. My senses were being overwhelmed, and my body was basking in it. All I could feel were Alec and Cade's touches. All I could hear were my breathless M0ans and whispers from the twins. I had completely forgotten our surroundings, the school classroom left my mind without a second thought. All I could focus on was the inescapable pleasure I was being put through. "Such a sweet little thing," Alec murmured, watching my senses return to me. Finally, the horror and satisfaction of what just happened hit me like a ton of bricks. My body hadn't even put up a fight against them. It had completely given in, succumbing to their touch as though it had no choice. A deep smirk formed on Cade's face. "Having fun now, sweetheart? Until next time, little doll." Alex's smirk matched his twins. The two of them left the empty classroom, and I began to drown in my thoughts. Something had to be wrong with me. To have absolutely no control wasn't normal. I'm positive I didn't react this way to any other man. Kyle put his arm around my shoulders last week and I wasn't ready to drop down on all fours. The more the twins touched me, the more muddled my mind seemed to get. What's so wrong with wanting them? A random voice ran through my head, posing a question that had me lost in thought. It wasn't exactly normal to be shared between two guys, but I couldn't choose between the twins. They both clearly wanted me for some odd reason, and obviously weren't opposed to sharing. And deep down, I wanted both of them. I wanted to be shared. But the twins were demanding, overwhelming, possessive, and kind of dangerous. My logical side screamed and pleaded, but there was more boiling in my head. A new side of me had emerged since we moved here, a side I had never encountered before. That side of me reacted to the twins in a pleasurable and intoxicating way. "They touch you against your will, Claire." The logical side of me screamed this over and over. But why did I enjoy it so much? Chapter 11. The final bell pulled me from my hectic thoughts. I pulled myself from the empty teacher's desk and wobbled over to the door. My legs felt shaky, and the sensitive spot between my legs was slightly sore. It was a short walk to Tori's locker, and much to my surprise she was already there. Tori's first words had me nearly falling over. "Whoa, what happened to your neck?" Tori gaped, her eyes locked on something I couldn't see. What?" I gasped, and Tori stepped aside, gesturing to the mirror hanging on her locker door. I stood on my tiptoes and peered into the mirror, choking on my own breath at the dark bruise-like spots that ran down my neck. The twins had left hickeys all over me. There was no way I'd be able to hide this from Melissa, or the people at work. I never had hickeys before, but I knew they didn't go away in 24 hours. Tori pursed her lips and eyed me knowingly. The twins. I clenched my teeth together and fought against the furious blush that stained my face. Apparently my reaction was a suitable answer. "If I give you this, I want a detailed explanation." Tori moved her ginger eyebrow and held up a bottle of concealer. "Deal." I huffed, grabbing the bottle from her hands. "Now explain." Tori placed a hand on her hip while I flipped my hair forward. I shook my head. "Not here. In your car so I can put this on my neck." We hopped in Tori's car and she helped me dab the creamy liquid on my neck. It wasn't the perfect shade, but it hid the spots just fine. "I'll pick you up one in your shade." Tori nodded to herself, and I was forever grateful. While I wanted to decline, I valued self-preservation more. Frank would be incorrigible if he saw my neck coated in hickeys. Being called slut would be the least of my concerns. By the time I was done explaining what happened in the empty classroom, we were parked in my driveway. Tori had been speechless the entire time, a look of shock lingered on her face. "I'm horrible, aren't I? IGR0ANED, can't even control myself." Tori shook her head. "I don't think most girls would resist them either, myself included. That's the thing though, I want to resist them." I sighed, confusion swirling within me. Is that really what I wanted? It had to be. It had to be what I wanted. A year from now I won't be in this town anymore. Alec and Cade were players, the twins who took what they wanted. For whatever reason they set their sights on me. This back and forth was exhausting, but I needed to make a decision and try to stick to it. Cade and Alec weren't good for me. I had always looked out for myself, and now I needed to more than ever. "Oh, almost forgot." Tori grinned sheepishly. "I got you something." I pursed my lips and stared at her. "I don't want it." Tori contorted her face into one of mock offense. "You don't even know what it is." "Tisk tisk, and I thought you liked surprises." "I hate surprises." I raised my eyebrow at her. "You know that." "Well, that SVCKS for you, but I happen to love surprises." Tori smirked, pulling out a small box. Tori IGR0ANED, but was cut off by the flaming redhead. "Listen here, miss." Tori glared at me. "You are going to accept my gift, and you are going to like it." I gave her one last weary glance and peeled back the bright wrapping paper on the box. "It isn't even a holiday," I murmured grumpily. "It gives a friend a gift day." Tori snickered, a grin playing on her lips as I looked at what was inside the box. A phone, an actual phone. Not a chunky flip phone like the one Melissa got me. This phone was shiny and new, set with a huge screen and multiple cameras. I shook my head furiously. "No, not a chance. I could never afford to pay you back for this, and I can't even afford my own phone plan." "You don't have to pay anything back, Claire." Tori shook her head, turning the phone on for me. "And it's already on my phone plan. Everything's paid for." Why would you get me something like this? I frowned. It made no sense. Tori had only known me for a whopping total of 2 weeks. I told you, my family has money. Tori shrugged, and besides, you're my friend. I could tell she was holding something back, but I decided not to question it. Fine, I'll accept it. I clenched my teeth together, but the minute I have the money for my own phone, I'm giving this one back. Got it? Yes ma'am. Tori grinned, giving me one of those one-armed hugs. By the way, my number's already in there. I went inside feeling a little teary-eyed, tucking the new cell phone deep in my book bag. This morning had momentarily been forgotten when Melissa approached me again. So, did you think about what I said this morning? Melissa asked softly, forcing a carefree smile to her face. Another sharp pang. Yeah, I did. I lied through my teeth. I had tried to forget about this morning the second it happened. And Melissa grinned at me. This time Frank was listening in on the conversation from his recliner, a fresh beer in his hand. I paused for a moment and thought it over hastily. The money would definitely be useful for my college fund, even if I only got half. Sure. I nodded, I'll call her, but on one condition. Melissa's smile twitched for a moment and I stiffened as she wrapped a single arm around my shoulders. This made me more nerve-wracked than anything Alec or Cade did. What's your condition? Her voice was cool, even. I want to stay home until Saturday. I pursed my P.S. It was only 2 days of school, I could make the work up easily. Plus, it gave me plenty of time to think about Alec and Cade. Melissa nodded, all right, deal. My mother Melissa was hugging me. It's just a fluke, my mind repeated. My defenses shot up and did what they could to protect me when the inevitable happened. Melissa had what she wanted, sooner or later she'd go back to treating me like vermin. I gotta go do homework. My voice sounded strained and hoarse, I'll call her when I get upstairs. All right hon, Melissa called as I turned and scrambled away. My lungs and heart were on overdrive as I flopped down on my bed. I knew it sounded silly, but Melissa had that affect on me. Even after living with her for years, some part of me wanted a mom. Every time Melissa needed something from me, she'd turn all nice and caring. Over time I learned she'd never change, she'd just continue manipulating me. It was nice though, for a moment. For those short hours I had an actual mom. Once my breathing finally stilled, I called the social worker. The call went straight to voicemail and I recited the line Melissa had told me. I was just a bratty kid who made the entire thing up. Of course I was getting my checks, of course they helped me. I was just mad at Melissa. Once my homework was finished I took an extremely long shower, basking in the hot water. My defenses slipped for just a moment, remembering what it felt like to be hugged by Melissa by my mother. I let a few tears slip down my cheeks and gave into the hollow feeling in my chest. 5 minutes passed and I raised my defenses, pushing Melissa from my mind. 5 minutes was all she deserved. I snuck downstairs at one point, grabbing some leftovers I had taken home from the restaurant. Whenever an order was messed up, they'd set the food off to the side. No one noticed or cared when I slipped a few containers for myself. It saved money on buying my own food, and tasted much better than anything I could make on my own. I flopped over on the bed and unlocked the phone Tori had given me. It was only fair of me to let her know about missing school the next 2 days. Claire, 8:58 p.m. Hey, I'm not gonna be in school these next 2 days. Sorry Tori, I cringed at the text I had sent, wondering if it was sufficient. It took me long enough to tap the letters out on the phone. Tori 9 p.m. Are you feeling alright? Claire 9:03 p.m. Just need some time to think. I'll be back Monday. Promise Tori 9:05 p.m. Ugh, alright, I get it also, just a heads up. I'm inviting myself over to your place tomorrow. My stomach clenched at the thought of Tori meeting Melissa and Frank. Not a chance I was gonna let that happen. Claire 9:08 p.m. Actually, can we just hang out at your house? There's some renovations going on at mine. I felt guilty for lying, but I refused to see the look of pity on her face when she saw where we lived. The most run-down looking house in town. Plus, Melissa would put on a good show for her. She'd act like the caring mom for a couple hours, and I couldn't handle that. Quite a bit of time passed and I wondered if I said something wrong. Maybe Tori was just as uncomfortable with bringing friends over her house as I was. Tori 9:34 p.m. Sounds good to me. Be ready at 3:30. Good night. Chapter 12. I went to bed early that night, hoping to get some decent sleep for a change. The twins lingered in my waking and sleeping moments. I thought about them a minimum of 329 times a day. I'm not sure how that's possible, but you'd think that would keep them from lingering around in my dreams. I tossed and turned for half the night, finally falling asleep around 3 in the morning. I didn't bother setting an alarm. I wanted to sleep through as much of the day as possible. I woke around 1 in the afternoon, noticing a voicemail on the flip phone Melissa had gotten me. The social worker had got my message and sent it along. She told me to expect the next check in the mail any day now. Melissa would be thrilled. I wonder how long it'll take her to revert back to her usual self. Hopefully she'll keep to her word and give me half of the money. I trudged down the hall quietly, slipping into the bathroom when I thought the coast was clear. I did my business and stared sleepily into the mirror as I brushed my teeth. The bathroom door creaked then swung open, and a very drunk Frank stepped in. I choked on the toothpaste I had in my mouth and took a tentative step back. In an instant my skin was clammy and fear coursed through my veins. Frank had that dead stare most drunk people have, and he smelled like piss and liquor. You a liar now, girl? Frank slurred drunkenly, taking a fumbling step forward. I shook my head, of course not. My voice was scratchy and muffled by the toothpaste in my mouth. I inwardly cringed as I swallowed the toothpaste, nearly gagging from the overwhelming taste of mint. I couldn't see any way out of this that didn't lead to me hitting or kicking Frank. You're lying to me right now. Frank rumbled, his beefy arm shooting out from his side. His hand slammed into my shoulder, and my teeth clicked as my back hit the dry wall. The corner of the windowsill jammed into my shoulder blade, leaving a stinging pain behind. I'm not lying. I forced through gritted teeth. Staying on my feet was my #1 priority at the moment. If I ended up on the floor, who knows what would happen to me? You were talkin' to the social worker cunt. Frank yelled boisterously, tellin' her you didn't get none of them checks, liar. I called her back and told her I lied. I knew it was useless reasoning with a drunk person, but he had me cornered. What else did you lie about? Frank snapped, you lie and say I touch you. I clamped my lips together. There wasn't a chance I would tell anyone about that. I would just be thrown in a foster home to rot, forgotten about until my 18th birthday. Living with Melissa at least granted me freedom. She didn't care where I was or what I did. I could work, have friends and do what I wanted, so long as I supported myself. Of course not. I shook my head furiously. My eyes were darting around, looking for any exit I could manage. Fear made my hands slick with sweat, and adrenaline rushed through my veins. I could try and get out the bathroom window, but I wouldn't be fast enough. Frank would just grab me and throw me to the ground. The only way out was through the bathroom door. If I was fast enough I could race down the hall and to my bedroom. My bedroom door thankfully had a lock. Liar! Frank snapped, and everything seemed to happen in slow motion. His hand lurched out, no doubt to aim a punch at my torso. Even drunk, Frank wasn't stupid enough to hit me in the face. I made the mistake of ducking to the floor in an attempt to dodge his hit and leap for the open door. Frank's balled-up fist connected with the side of my face, sending me off to the side. My rib cage slammed against the porcelain bathtub, but with the adrenaline rushing through me the pain was blocked out. I didn't stay on the floor long. Frank took longer to recover, being drunk and all. Alarm flashed over his drunken features after realizing his fist connected with my face. I used the moment of confusion to dart under his arm and out the bathroom door. His confusion was short-lived as he spun on his heel, wobbling slightly. I darted for my bedroom door, feeling him close behind. His hand was mere inches away from my door when I slammed it shut in his face and clicked the lock. Frank pounded on my bedroom door, screaming obscenities. His words were muffled for the time being, but I didn't plan on sticking around until he broke my door down. Thankful I fell asleep in a pair of sweatpants, I grabbed a jacket and slipped on some shoes. After stuffing my wallet and cell phone in my pocket, I yanked my bedroom window open. I silently thanked whoever made the house for including a roof to the back porch. My bedroom faced the woods and my window was only a few feet above the porch ceiling. Closing my window silently behind me, I dropped down onto the roof. The action sent a small pain through my ankle, but I ignored it. Getting down from the porch room would be harder than I thought. There was nothing there for me to hold onto, nothing to ease myself to the ground with. The adrenaline was slowly wearing off and I was all too aware of the throbbing pain in my face. I scooted close to the edge of the roof and let my feet hang down. I wasn't sure how I'd manage this, but the goal was to hit the ground in one piece. I slid my body off the roof and held on with my hands. My upper body strength was clearly lacking, and I could feel my fingers slip with every second that passed. Somewhere in the back of my head, I had the feeling someone was scolding me. Ignoring the odd feeling, I let go of the ledge. I was pleasantly surprised to find out the porch roof wasn't that high, not nearly high enough to cause me serious harm. However, I'm clumsy and have a talent for getting injured. As I landed, I felt my ankle roll out from under me. A sharp pain shot up my foot and into the side of my leg. While I was fairly sure my foot wasn't broken, it hurt pretty badly. I let out a relieved huff and looked around our crappy backyard. I had stressed so much about getting out of Frank's grasp that I hadn't thought about what I'd do once I made it outside. The backyard was in absolute shambles, and I wondered who the previous owners of the house were. There was a rickety old playset in the backyard, tossed into the corner to collect dust and termites. The grass was extremely patchy, and weeds grew in large clumps. I wasn't sure when was the last time the lawn was mowed, but judging from the height of the grass I'd say at least 6 months or more. It was nearing 2 o'clock now and school would be letting out soon. My stomach's angry rumble cut through my thoughts, and my feet headed in the direction of the gas station I visited the first day we moved here. The same girl was at the front counter as I walked in. I gave a tentative wave and walked towards the drinks. After grabbing a water, I headed to the front of the store to grab some granola bars. A familiar face walked in and I found myself blinking as I looked at a sheepish Autumn. "Hey Claire." Autumn had a forced grin on her face, as though she had been caught doing something bad. I frowned. "What are you doing here?" I chided myself just a moment later. Why wouldn't she be here? It's a gas station. I'm skipping last period. Autumn shrugged, a light pink color tinging her cheeks. Don't tell anyone you saw me, all right? Of course not. I grinned at her. If you hadn't noticed, I'm not in school either. That makes me feel much better about skipping gym. Autumn chuckled. Grace has been insufferable today. Really? I frowned, glad I didn't show then. She's been extra obnoxious since her and Cade got back together. Autumn rolled her eyes and flipped her long hair behind her back. Something painful echoed within my chest at the thought of Cade getting back together with Grace. They had me locked in a classroom and Cade was back with her as though nothing happened. Sleeping around wasn't something I did, but I certainly wouldn't be used as a toy for anyone. They got back together. I tried to keep the utter disappointment and pain from my voice. Doesn't even matter, I told myself. He was never yours, and it's your fault for getting swept up in them. Should have known you'd get hurt in the end. You probably didn't even mean anything to them. Seems like it. Autumn shrugged, she's been hanging off his arm all day. Best of luck to Cade then. I let out a forced chuckle. When are you planning on coming back to school? Autumn asked as I swiped my card to pay for my things. I shrugged, I'll be back Monday. What I really wanted to say was never. I needed to get a grip and learn to resist the twins. There was no way I'd be Cade's little plaything while he was still involved with Grace. I'll see you Monday then. Autumn smiled and I headed for the door. Oh, don't forget to be ready by 9 p.m. Saturday. Put your number in my phone. I mumbled half-heatedly, still peeved that Tori gave me an entire cell phone. After Autumn put her number in my phone, I sent her a quick text and headed out the door. I wandered aimlessly around the parts of town I was familiar with and shot a quick text to Tori. Me 2:23 p.m. Hey, my folks needed me out of the house for a bit. Any chance you could pick me up early? Another bold-faced lie. What else was I going to say? Hi, can you pick me up early cause my drunk piece of shit step Frank decided to go crazy and hit me? Oh, and I FK'd my ankle up jumping out of the window, so bring some ice along. That definitely wasn't going to cut it. Tori 2:26 p.m. Sure thing. I'll be at your house in 5. I wasn't sure what I did to deserve a friend like Tori, but goodness was I thankful. I hadn't had a friend like her since elementary school. Once middle school rolled around, bullying began and I learned to stick to myself. Me 2:37 p.m. Actually, could you just pick me up from the park in the center of town? I felt horrible for asking even more of her, but my ankle was throbbing like crazy. The short walk to the gas station had me hissing in pain with every step. Tori 2:39 p.m. You walked that far? Be there in 5. By the time I thought out a coherent response, Tori was pulling up next to the curb. Hop in. Tori's yelled from the car, sticking her head out the window to grin at me. Her fire-colored locks shifted with the wind and hung out of the car window. I rolled my eyes at her, but a grin crept onto my face. I clamped my teeth down on the side of my cheek and tried not to limp as I walked over to the passenger side. Just a little tiny heads up. Tori grinned at me sheepishly, and I nearly let out a groan. What is it? I raised my eyebrow at her, a bad feeling nestling itself in my stomach. So, I kinda sorta live next to Alec and Cade. Tori squeaked out, her voice getting higher with each word. You what? I stared at her deadpan and let out a long breath. All right, it's all right. I can handle it. I'm not giving in to them anymore. I'm done with them. You got this, Claire. Tori nodded proudly, speeding off down the road. I'm tough, I can handle this. I nodded sternly, giving myself a half-hearted pep talk. Super tough. Tori nodded, obviously doing her best to cheer me on. I gave her a pointed look and chuckled when she burst out into laughter. You gotta work on your pep talk skills. Tori shook her head mournfully, and I munched on my granola bars. Tori pulled down a road that led directly into the vast forest that surrounded town. I moved an eyebrow at her questioningly and she shrugged. A lot of people live out here. She shrugged, as if it were no big deal. Some familiar words ran through my head, words the young cashier had spoken to me when I first moved here. Town's pretty small. Most of the people in town have houses further out in the woods. People around here seem to like their privacy. Chapter 13. Tori drove deep into the woods and I watched the trees pass by in silence. We drove about 10 minutes into the forest until spotting another paved road. I let my fingers wander up to my cheek, wincing at the soreness that radiated across my face. Frank had never hit me in the face before, and I wondered how long it would take until my face began to swell and bruise. Hopefully, it could wait until I made it safely home. I didn't bother letting Melissa know where I was. I didn't have her number anyway. Tori turned down another road and I felt my jaw drop as a mini town came into view. A small town nestled in the middle of the forest, and it looked all shiny and new. A sprinkling fountain sat in the middle of the small town square. Hell, they even had a few shops lingering around. I instantly spotted a coffee shop and a little diner-type restaurant. Wow! I gaped, looking around the town square. People were out and about, walking down the sidewalk and sitting on benches. Some were even planting flowers or maintaining the grounds. Awesome, right? Tori turned and grinned, as she's rolled the windows down. I inhaled deeply, the smell of fresh flowers mingling with the cool breeze. The sound of chattering and running water was in the air, and I couldn't get over how peaceful it felt here. Completely away from everyone else, nestled deep in the woods. Who knew there was a whole town back here? I chuckled and shook my head, but my eyes were glued to my surroundings. So this is where Kate and Alec lived. My heart ached just thinking about them, an image of Grace popping into my mind at the worst moment. Stupid tears pricked at the backs of my eyes, but I forced them down. No way I would even spare a tear over the two of them. My heart felt twisted and confused. Sure, Alec wasn't dating Grace, but my heart told me I wanted them both. One without the other made me feel empty inside. It's not quite the size of a normal town, but we have amazing coffee, so that's a plus. Tori giggled, making a turn down another road. You have to take me there sometime. I grinned back at her, confused by the hidden emotion flickering in her eyes. Of course. Tori grinned, the hidden emotion buried deep. We turned down a different road and headed a little deeper into the forest. The town square was still visible as Tori pulled into a strange-looking cul-de-sac. A absolutely huge house sat at the end, with a driveway big enough to fit at least 6 cars. It was at least 3 stories high, painted the color of a clear sky. Huge windows adorned the house, making it look like a modern version of a farmhouse. Who lives there? I gaped at the huge house, noticing there were no cars in the driveway. Flowers lined the entrance to the driveway, giving the house a colorful and cheerful feel. Biggest house in our little town. Tori chuckled, I'm sure you can guess who lives there. Kate and Alec. I pursed my lips, and gave her a pointed look. You'd be correct. Tori chuckled humorlessly, this is my house. Tori grinned as she pulled up to a similar but much smaller looking house. Tori didn't lie when she said she lived near Alec and Cade. By near, she meant right next to them. Her house was nestled on the side of the cul-de-sac, sitting just a few feet away from the twins' home. It was a simple two-story house, painted a brilliant white. Deep blue shutters stuck out on the side of each window, along with a long wrap-around porch. I had never seen houses this shiny and new before, only in movies. Wow! I grinned, running my eyes over every detail of her home. Seeing these new houses made me realize the dump of a house I've been living in. Mom and Dad painted the outside a year or two ago. Tori grinned. Mom gets tired of the color every year and insists on repainting it. I couldn't help but notice the way Tori talked about her mom, the amusement and love that filled her eyes at the mention of her parents. Having amazing parents was a privilege that most people never took into consideration. I tried to keep the blatant jealousy from my eyes as I followed Tori to her house. We made it to the porch when a woman identical to Tori practically burst through the front door. She was almost vibrating with excitement as she juggled a plate of food, 2 glasses, and a pitcher of something dark. "Mom!" Tori groaned, giving me an embarrassed glance. "I told you to give us a minute." "I gave you plenty of minutes." Tori's mom dismissed her with a wave and a cheeky grin. "I just wanted to meet your friend." "Hi." I smiled shyly, taking a seat next to Tori on one of the outdoor couches scattered on the porch. The couch was placed against the wall of the house, giving us a good view of the entire cul-de-sac. "Mom, this is Claire." Tori gave a forced-looking grin, putting emphasis on my name. "Claire, this is my mom." "So nice to meet you, Claire." Tori's mom beamed, looking so much like her daughter. While I was surprised at how welcoming and giddy Tori's mom was, the entire situation was kind of odd. Tori continued using my full name, putting emphasis on it as though her mom would forget. It was also strange how excited Tori's mom was to meet me. I'm sure Tori had other friends, and I couldn't find an explanation for her mom's unruly excitement. Tori's was the spitting image of her mom. While her mom had laugh lines around her mouth and eyes, she had the same curly red hair. "I made the two of you some sandwiches and sweet tea." Tori's mom grinned happily and sat the plate and pitcher down. I glanced down hungrily at the food. I can't remember the last time I had an actual sandwich. Usually, I just bought cheap frozen foods for dinner and small snacks for the rest of the day. No, it wasn't healthy, but it was very cost-efficient. I tentatively grabbed an sandwich and nibbled on the corner, visibly jumping as Tori's mom plopped down beside me. "Mom!" Tori whined, placing a hand against her forehead. "I just wanna talk to your friend." Tori's mom grinned. "You never bring anyone over." Tori rolled her eyes and gave me an apologetic smile. Embers of jealousy swirled in my stomach as Tori's mom grinned happily at me. "So I heard you just moved here." Tori's mom grinned, pouring some sweet tea in a glass and sliding it my way. I nodded, swallowing a mouthful of sandwich. "Yeah, we came from California." "Such a long way." Tori's mom gave a soft smile. "I'm sure you had to leave a lot of people behind." I shrugged. "Not really. I didn't exactly have friends in Cali." My face was burning under the gaze of Tori and her mom. I felt like I was at some kind of twisted interrogation. Sweat tea and sandwiches to calm me, and a million questions to worry me. "Why is that?" Tori's mom frowned. "From what Tori's told me, you're such a nice girl." "Mom!" Tori groaned again, earning another sheepish smile from her mom. I was trying really hard not to be creeped out by the entire situation, but it was hard. My grandma and I were fairly close, but I still lacked that mother-daughter relationship. It was completely foreign and weird to see how close Tori was with her mom. I just never had the time. I shrugged, taking another bite. Work and school took up most of my time. You held a job and went to school. Tori's mom frowned for just a moment. Did your parents make you get a job? I know Tori's dad tried for the longest time, but I told him she needed to focus on her studies. Mom, really? Tori rolled her eyes and took another bite of sandwich. I chuckled quietly as Tori's mom finished her little mini rant. Her and Tori's relationship was what I always wanted with Melissa. It was clear they loved each other, even in the way they argued. No, I chuckled, shaking my head. Melissa and Frank don't make me work. I'm saving up for college. Melissa and Frank? Tori's mom raised an eyebrow and I looked at her in confusion. I know it was probably weird calling your parents by their first name, but I'm sure other kids did it too, right? My mom and stepdad. I grimaced, the words tasting sour on my tongue. Tori's mom opened her mouth to say something else when the sound of amused yelling filled the air. A jeep full of guys sped down the cul-de-sac, skidding to a stop in front of the sky blue house. Claire, maybe we should go inside. Tori frowned, picking up her book bag. Nonsense. Tori's mom gave her a stern look. I'm sure Claire wouldn't mind meeting the twins. Mom, she's already met them. Tori grimaced, and I couldn't keep my eyes from wandering over to the parked jeep. Alec and Kate hopped out of the jeep, followed by two other guys. As if they could feel my eyes on them, they turned their heads in my direction. The other two guys went silent and looked our way. Jealousy and longing churned in my stomach as I looked into the dark eyes of the twins. I definitely wanted to go inside. I was practically itching to go up to them. An entire day without seeing them felt too long, but I wouldn't let my resolve crumble. Kate had Grace, and I'm sure Alec had someone for himself as well. I wasn't going to be some side piece. Nice kids. Tori's mom nodded, sending a weird smile my way. Troublemakers, but good kids. Let's go inside, Claire. Tori nudged my shoulder, snapping me out of the staring competition I was holding with the twins. Yeah. I nodded, peeling my gaze away from them. Let's go. I turned my back on the twins, still feeling their eyes burning holes in my skin. A frown formed on my face as I went inside Tori's house. It felt like I was leaving a piece of myself behind, in the care of Alec and Kate. Chapter 14. I followed Tori into her house, my ankle absolutely screaming in protest. I could. In the short time I'd been hanging out with Tori, my ankle had swelled up considerably. I tried to cover my horrendous limp, but the sharp pain shooting up my leg made it difficult. Are you limping? Tori frowned, her eyes locked on my injured ankle. It's nothing. I shrugged. I fell earlier and must have twisted it. I hadn't much experience with lying, but I hoped I had enough skill to fool Tori. My heart was thundering in my chest from the simple lie, and Tori stood quietly for a few moments. The more seconds that passed in silence, the faster my heart began to beat. You should let me wrap it. Tori pursed her lips. She didn't look fooled. It'll hurt less to walk on. I contemplated that for a few moments and nodded in defeat. I could easily cover up a twisted ankle. A simple fall would be the perfect excuse. She knew how clumsy I was, so it was no wonder I somehow managed to fall. Wait here. Tori called out over her shoulder as she walked down the hall on the first floor. Tori came back a few moments later with a first aid kit in hand. I'm gonna help you up the stairs to my bedroom. Tori nodded, her lips still pursed. It's all right, I can get up the stairs. I mumbled, sulking past her. I gritted my teeth and held in a hiss of pain as I pulled myself up each step. Tori was completely silent behind me. It was clear she wasn't buying my story about falling. My heart hammered in response. The last thing I needed was for someone to report Frank and Melissa for abuse. They wouldn't find any proof, and the accusation would only piss the two of them off. Tori pointed at a door down the hall, and I let her take the lead. Her room was huge, full of fuzzy pillows and plush carpets. I plopped down on a couch she had in her room, pushed up against the wall. I looked around in amazement as Tori pulled out a thick-looking wrap. I had never seen a room so huge, or so decorated. Her room looked more like a suite. A four-poster bed sat across the room, a white comforter sat on top with tons of fuzzy white and purple pillows. It looked like one of those bedrooms you see in an interior design magazine. "Your room is amazing," I gaped, hoping to change the subject. "Mom's an interior designer." Tori grinned. "She went crazy with the entire house." "Well, that explains it." I chuckled. "Send her over to my house sometime." I clamped my lips shut hastily, hoping I hadn't implied anything strange. If I had, Tori didn't seem to notice. "How's renovations going over at your place?" Tori looked up and smiled. "They're going good, great really." I shrugged, "Just fixing up the bathrooms and kitchen. Maybe you could stay the night sometime." Tori smiled. Something flashed across her eyes but was gone before I could identify it. "Maybe." I grinned back. "Any night is fine with me." "Your parents don't care if you stay over on a school night?" Tori inquired, her eyebrow raised curiously. "Not really." I shook my head. "Melissa kinda lets me do my own thing." The voice in my head groaned. By trying to remain relaxed, I was simply attracting more unwanted attention. I was truly horrible at keeping anything a secret. "Take your shoe off." Tori poked at my shoe. I could feel my jaw clench as I untied my shoelaces. Every little movement made my ankle throb, and I was beginning to worry something was actually wrong with it. I averted my eyes once I peeled my sock off. Tori's startled gasp had me gnawing on the inside of my cheek. I let my eyes flicker down warily, and they nearly bulged out of my head as I took in the state of my ankle. It wasn't simply swollen, it looked like a balloon. Splotches of black and purple intertwined and mixed on my foot like an art palette. This was definitely more than a twisted ankle. "Oh my God, Claire!" Tori placed her hand over her mouth. "And this happened when you fell." I gritted my teeth together and let out a hiss of pain when Tori gently lifted my foot. "Yeah." I nodded. "I tripped over something and fell down the stairs. I didn't think it was this bad." "You need to go to a hospital." Tori gave me a hard stare, glancing down at my purple foot. Fear knotted itself in my stomach, and I turned my head away from her intense stare. "What happened to your face, Claire?" Tori's tone was blank, guarded. Tentatively, I lifted a hand to my cheek. It was definitely sore, painful even when I touched it. I couldn't tell if it had swelled up or not. "What do you mean?" I frowned. Tori huffed and got up from the floor, placing a compact mirror in my hands. I pursed my lips as my eyes trailed over the side of my face. My cheekbone was swollen, not horribly but enough to draw plenty of unwanted attention. The skin around it was turning a deep shade of blue. I must have hit my face when I fell. I shrugged, my eyes flickering from Tori's to my throbbing foot. "Lie better," my conscience was telling me. "Yeah, we need to get you to a hospital." Tori nodded with finality and I sputtered for a reasonable response. "I can't." I shook my head, reaching down to pull my sock back on. I don't have insurance and Mel, my family doesn't have the money. Tori's eyes flickered rapidly from my purple foot, to my swollen cheek, and back to my eyes. I could practically see the gears in her head turning. Any second now, I expected steam to erupt from her ears. Her hair was such a bright red, it already looked like her head was on fire. My dad's a doctor. Tori crossed her arms, he has an office here in town. We're going, Claire. Tori, I can't afford that. I shook my head. I slipped my shoe back on through clenched teeth and went to stand. Tori met me halfway and wrapped an arm around my waist. You don't need to pay for anything. Tori sighed impatiently, helping me down the stairs. Look, I'm kind of afraid of doctors and hospitals. I hissed through clenched teeth. While this wasn't a complete lie, I was basically grasping at straws. Some primitive part of my B.RA and even contemplated just running away from Tori. Even if I somehow managed to get far on my busted ankle, I didn't know my way around. I understand, Tori's just trying to be a good friend, but the truth could ruin everything for me. Child abuse would get reported to social services, and another agent would come out and investigate. Melissa would clean up her act and pretend to be the caring and dutiful mother. Once the social worker found no proof, they'd leave me with an extremely pissed off Melissa and Frank. See? No happy ending in sight. My happy ending was graduating high school and getting out of this town. Claire, you're my friend and I care about you. Tori grimaced, you're going to the doctor's. I'll carry you if I have to. You might need to. I hissed, my strength was quickly waning. I was practically panting as we made it to the bot 5 tom of the stairs. Here, shift your weight. Tori nudged my side, and I grimaced. She hit the exact spot I slammed against the tub, but there was no way I'd make that known. Oh gosh, what happened to Claire? Tori's mom poked her head from the kitchen, her concerned eyes locked on Tori and I. I swallowed and gave her a weary smile. The concern in her voice hit me hard, something I had never heard in Melissa's words. She hurt her ankle earlier. Tori gave me a pointed look before she turned her gaze back to her mom. I'm taking her to Dad's office. Good thinking. Tori's mom nodded, a frown formed on her face. Do you girls need any help? Nah, I got her. Tori shook her head, practically propping me against her as she opened the front door. Thanks, Tori's mom. I gave her a small smile, ignoring the thundering pain in my heart. Call me Olivia, dear. Tori's mom smiled softly as we walked out onto the porch. I wasn't sure how she managed it, but Tori supported most of my weight on her own. She didn't even seem to be struggling. My blood ran cold when a familiar voice called out. Shit, what happened? Cade's rough voice called out from the blue house next door. I clamped my jaw shut as Cade strolled up to Tori and Alec followed behind his brother. The two guys they had driven home with stood off to the side awkwardly. Is she all right? Alec frowned, glancing at his brother. The two of them looked absolutely godlike, but that wasn't a surprise. Alec wore his typical black t-shirt and a leather jacket, his chocolate hair a tousled mess on his head. Cade wore a black button-down shirt which was rolled up to his elbows. My eyes couldn't help but flicker over his muscular vein-filled forearms. The two of them were devastatingly handsome, and my heart reacted to that fact. My heart thundered and pleaded to seek out comfort from the twins, and I had nearly given in. A clear image of Grace in Cade's arms sent jealousy flooding through me, and allowed me to take control of my hectic emotions. And to think I was going to give in to their confusing advances. I'm fine. I snapped, taking the two of them by surprise. Their widened eyes made me feel smug, and I tried not to let that show. She hurt her ankle. Tori shrugged, giving me an apologetic look. I'm taking her to my dad's office. Cade nodded and gave Alec a hard look before turning back to Tori. We'll take her. Cade nodded to Tori, and I watched the muscle in his jaw work. His voice was rough and demanding, sending a weird shiver down my spine. Not a chance. I shook my head furiously. All right. Tori nodded, and I gaped at her incredulously, but I'm coming with. That's fine. Alec nodded at Tori and glanced at Cade. No, I pursed my lips, but none of them were listening to me. What, Tori? I growled under my breath at her. I'm sorry, Claire. Tori frowned, but her gaze continued to flicker to the twins. I wasn't sure what pissed me off more. Tori blinding listening to the twins even though she knew I wanted to avoid them, or the fact that she acted like she had no choice in the matter. As though Cade's word was law. Come here, D0LL, Alec murmured, knocking my legs out from under me and pulling me into his arms. I can walk. I snapped, squirming as I tried to force myself from his grip. Someone's feisty today. Cade's full lips turned up in a smirk as he opened the door of the jeep. Shouldn't you be worrying about someone else? I snapped at Cade, watching his eyebrows lift in surprise. And who do you suppose I should be worrying about, sweetheart? Cade murmured, getting much too close to me. My heart pounded erratically and my brain became cloudy as the husky smell of Cade's cologne filled my nose. Grace would be a good start. I snapped, and clamped my lips shut once I realized what I had said. Much to my dismay, amusement flashed over Cade's features and he looked over at Alec with a deep smirk. Alec set me down in the passenger seat of the jeep, and I tried to ignore the fact that the entire vehicle smelled just like the twins. Alec had his own identical smirk on his face, which only pissed me off more. They continued to toy with me, and now it was funny Cade had taken back his girlfriend. She's practically shaking with jealousy, Alec murmured to his brother with a low chuckle. I ground my teeth together in a poor attempt to keep my mouth shut. You wish I was jealous. I snapped to the two of them, keeping my gaze on the window. We drove back through the small town square and stopped at one of the small buildings in the center. I hadn't even noticed a doctor's office sat in the middle of town. My turn. Cade smirked at his brother, and I rolled my eyes. I'd much rather have Tori carry me. Speaking of which, Tori had been completely silent the entire ride. Careful, brother. Alec chuckled lowly, she's seething. A frustrated growl left my lips. If they weren't trying to harass me, they were trying to provoke me with words. It felt good giving them a reaction though. They obviously didn't expect it, and it helped me let off some steam. Cade lifted me off the seat as though I weighed less than a feather. I refused to melt into his arms, despite how much I desperately wanted to. You are too small to hold this much anger, sweetheart, Cade murmured in amusement and I scoffed. You haven't seen angry yet, I mumbled, equally disgruntled and ecstatic to be nestled in Cade's arms. Chapter 15. Alec, hello there Tori. The new receptionist grinned. Hey JC. Tori smiled in return, is my dad in the back? JC had just recently graduated high school, and her parents practically begged for their daughter to apprentice under the pack doctor. Sure is. JC nodded, go on through, he's not busy at the moment. My fingers twitched irritably, and I glanced over at my brother. While I relented and let Cade have a turn holding Claire, I was already beginning to miss her. Twins were exceedingly rare in the werewolf community, making Cade and I a medical anomaly. While Cade happened to be a few minutes older than I, the two of us shared the role of alpha. We had spent out entire lives sharing things. The only thing we refused to share was women. Cade and I had never found a woman worth sharing, someone we both couldn't part with. Our parents were at a standstill. It was clear Cade and I were both alphas, but what would that mean for our future mates? Would we each find a separate mate? Or would we share a woman, like we had shared everything else in our lives? In all honesty, the idea of sharing a mate with my brother made my blood boil. That is, until we met Claire. The little thing ran into us in the hallway, provoking an irritating response from Grace. The two of us were completely stunned. While sharing a mate was always the topic of discussion, it had never been done before in our history. The two of us felt the mate bond clearly, drawing us in and making us crave the quiet new girl. Cade was quick to end things with Grace, and I wondered if he would stay true to his word. The two of us have had many partners, but Grace was someone Cade could always turn to when he wanted. The two of us were completely captivated with Claire. Her name as unique as per personality. Her eyes were the first thing to draw us in. One a brilliant shade of blue, the other the color of molten chocolate. We had never seen someone with two different colored eyes before. Cade and I have always enjoyed games. After realizing how quiet and timid the little doll was, we made it our mission to provoke a reaction. The two of us had clearly underestimated the power of the mate bond. The urge to touch her, to feel her creamy skin beneath our fingers was stronger than the two of us anticipated. After a heated discussion between the two of us, we decided to resist the mate bond. Neither of us wanted to share, and yet neither wanted to part with Claire. It took some time for us to accept the situation for what it was. We were both destined to love the same girl. Tori thanked the cheerful receptionist and turned back to Claire. Her gaze was guarded, giving Claire a look I couldn't place. It was clear Claire was unaware of what we truly were. Cade and I struggled to come to a consensus on how to approach that subject. While we were determined to keep the little doll, the last thing we wanted was to completely scare her off. While we were absolute shit at showing it, we wanted her. We wanted her love and affection, but my brother and I are not what you'd call romantic. Hell, neither of us have ever had an actual girlfriend. We simply wished they were our girlfriends. Grace would fall under that category. We were completely thrown through a loop when we met Claire. JC's eyes nearly popped out of her head as her eyes flickered between my brother and I. I tried to shoot my brother a warning glance, but his eyes were glued on Claire. She pouted in his arms, still seething from the latest rumor she somehow heard. How she heard it when she failed to come to school was beyond me. Cade and I had been irritable all day, seeing our mate in school was what we looked forward to most. The two of us hoped we hadn't scared her off with our little fun in the empty classroom, but we simply couldn't keep our hands off of her. Cade and I adored a girl who tried to resist our advances, secretly fantasizing about our fingers roaming her heated skin. The fight made it fun, and boy did Claire put up a fight. The desire she held for the two of us was clear in her unique eyes, but so was the determination that fueled her defiance. It was thrilling and incredibly arousing, pushing Claire's boundaries, crumbling her willpower into dust. Her body responded to the two of us fully. She had truly been made for Cade and I, perfection in a petite and feisty form. Alf JC's voice was shaky, her fingers smoothing the cream blouse she was wearing. "Thank you, JC." My brother cut her off with a polite smile, now that he finally peeled his eyes away from our entrancing mate. Cade and I followed Tori down the hall, walking into a large room. Cade and I had never visited the Pack Doctor before. The two of us were exceptionally skilled at fighting, and neither of us had ever been harmed bad enough to visit. Tori, what brings you here, darlin'? Tori's dad, the pack doctor, grinned at his child. Tori had once been close friends with Cade and I, but sometimes people grow apart. It was sheer luck that Tori found lasting friendship with our mate. My friend hurt her ankle. Tori smiled, raising her eyebrow at Claire. Tori was silently daring her to argue. I couldn't keep the smirk from my face when defiance flashed through Claire's intoxicating eyes. She clearly wasn't happy to be here. Although, seeing her with Tori answered a few questions. Claire obviously wasn't sick, so why did she stay home from school? Was it really to avoid Cade and I? She doesn't know what we are. Cade informed the doctor through the mind link. We would like to keep it that way. Very well, alphas. The pack doctor replied, shooting a glance our way. You can set her down over here. The doctor motioned for Cade to come forward. Cade set Claire down on the thick pad, and I could tell he missed having her in his arms. That makes the two of us then. She's quite angry over a silly rumor. Cade murmured through the mind link in amusement. I rolled my eyes. You should have pushed Grace off of you. Grace knows we are done. Cade grimaced, his eyes locked on Claire. You know Grace as well as I do, she will not give up. I pursed my lips, watching the doctor remove Claire's shoe. Then she will be punished for defying us. Cade crossed his arms over his chest, I have no use for her anymore. That was Cade's romantic way of saying no one else could replace Claire. As I said, we aren't the romantic type. Regardless, we would strive to become whatever Claire wanted us to be. My teeth clenched together audibly as I looked down at Claire's foot. It was 3 times the size it should have been, and was covered in purple and black splotches. What happened to her foot? Cade was the first of us to snap. His glare was directed at Tori. Claire jumped at Cade's outburst and his eyes instantly softened. I could tell Cade hated the idea of Claire in pain as much as I did. The urge to be near her, to comfort her, was overwhelming. Her vanilla and pear scent swirled around the room, like an alluring perfume. I'll have to take Claire down the hall for X-rays. The doctor informed us, a concerning look on his face. What's the problem? I demanded through the mind link. The concerned look on the doctor's face twisted my insides painfully. It looks like a simple fracture, but I would like to know how this happened. The doctor responded quickly, she has a bruise on her face. Has she been in any fights at school? Cade and I locked eyes. I wonder if he had the same sickening feeling in his gut. Neither one of us knew much about Claire's family. However, she was a clumsy little thing. Regardless, my blood boiled at the thought of someone laying a hand on her. I could easily tell Cade felt the same. No. She wouldn't fight anyone. I shook my head. Claire might be feisty at times, but she wouldn't fight anyone. She might act tough at times, but it was clear she had a kind heart. If I could make a suggestion, I'm going to carry her to the next room if that is all right with the two of you. The doctor's eyes flickered up to Claire as she hissed in pain under his touch. You can see what Tori knows. Cade flashed me a hard look, and I could practically tell what he was thinking. No way did we want any man touching our mate, but I highly doubted Claire would tell us anything. She was still pissed at the thought of Cade getting back with Grace. Very well. I muttered, clenching my fists as the doctor lifted Claire into his arms. Aren't you coming? Claire frowned at Tori, her eyes unusually large. Tori shook her head. She gave Cade and I a hard look. I'll be right there, give me 5 minutes. Claire sighed and nodded her head. It was clear she felt uncomfortable, and I desperately wanted to wipe away the frown that fell on her plush lips. Tori waited patiently for her dad to leave with Claire and turned to the two of us with a frown. Before you ask, I only know what she told me. Tori huffed, her gaze flickering between the two of us, but in return I have a question for the two of you. You want to negotiate? Cade spat irritably. Claire is hurt and you plan on keeping information from us. I rolled my eyes at my brother, he was the more temperamental one of the two of us. Let's hear her out before we condemn her. I murmured through the mind link. Very well. Cade's reply was gruff and irritable. What's your question? I asked Tori. Her eyebrow moved as her hazel eyes canned my brother and I. Tori had once been a close friend, it was interesting how much she had changed over the years. Once a shy and timid child, she had become just as confident and outgoing as her mother. It's not a question, really. Tori pursed her lips, more so, I want your input on an observation I made. Well, that definitely gained our attention. What Tori said next had my brother and I exchanging weary glances. Claire's your mate, isn't she? Tori's lips twitched, fighting a smirk. Cade and I were rendered speechless for a moment, glancing at each other hastily. She doesn't miss much, does she? I let out an amused chuckle through the mind link. Apparently not. Cade remarked. Even if you deny it, your reaction tells me everything I need to know. Tori nodded, looking somewhat worried for her friend. We decided to keep the news of finding our mate from the pack. We didn't need anyone slipping up and telling Claire what we truly were. Even our parents were in the dark about Claire's identity. And she's really both of your mates. Tori frowned, confusion shining in her eyes. That's never happened before. I was the first to answer, she is. We would appreciate if you kept this to yourself. I was the more charming and diplomatic brother, if I do say so myself. I spoke my words carefully, not wanting to use an alpha command unless absolutely necessary. Of course. Tori nodded, she's my best friend, but it's not my place to say anything. Good. I nodded, satisfied with her response. We have an agreement then. Now tell us, how did she get hurt? Cade grimaced, his anger and impatience lingering in his words. I decided to chime in, we know she has a bruise on her face. Are those the extent of her injuries? Tori frowned, I have no clue. It's not like I can just tell her to take her clothes off. I raised my eyebrow at Cade, I'm sure we could convince her. Desire for our little mate flashed in my brother's eyes, just as it flashed within my own. Tori snorted in disbelief, earning an incredulous look from Cade and I. If it wasn't already obvious, she's not happy with the two of you. Tori gave the two of us a stern look, oddly reminding me of my mother, there's no way you'll get her out of her clothes anytime soon. I shot Cade a hard glare, unsupervised when he snapped at me through the mind link. I've made it more than clear, Grace and I are finished. Cade snapped, how was I supposed to know she'd spread rumors? Make it clearer. I snapped back. There is something else. Tori frowned, looking mildly worried and uncomfortable. She told me she got hurt falling down the stairs. It's not a long shot. Cade murmured, she is quite clumsy. She is. Tori nodded, but I think she's hiding something. What do you suspect? I grimaced, 2 seconds away from storming up to Claire and demanding some answers. I don't suspect anything. Tori shrugged, she just got real nervous and defensive when I asked what happened. We'll just have to keep an eye on her. I nodded, we'll stay in the woods, keep to wolf form so she doesn't think we're stalking her. Chapter 16. Tori's dad was really nice as far as doctors go. While I still hated hospitals, I felt a little more comfortable. Tori's dad had given me half of some little white pill. After about half an hour, the pain in my foot subsided to a dull throb. You have a fracture in your foot. Tori's dad pursed his L.P.S., obviously eyeing the bruise on my cheek. Quite a fall you had. Sure was. I nodded, fighting to keep my voice relaxed and even. I'm pretty clumsy though, so it isn't a surprise. Make sure to be careful next time. Tori's dad nodded, seeming unconvinced. Will do. I murmured, my folks are renovating the house at the moment, so it's been pretty cluttered at the moment. I was just burying myself in lies at this point. Lying about my relationship with my family. Lying about my house. Lying about my bruises. I reminded myself it'll all be worth it once I graduate and move out. All of the lies would be worth it in the end. You're going to have to wear this boot for a few weeks. The doctor informed me, wrapping my foot up tightly. My heart jumped at the thought of wearing a boot. If Melissa noticed, it would be game over. She'd assume Frank hurt me, and would know I went to the hospital. But how was I going to hide a boot? Tori would flip out if she caught me not wearing it. Either way, I was screwed. It was only a matter of time. Alec, Cade, and Tori filtered back into the room. Each had a strange look on their face that made the knot in my stomach grow heavy. Tori wasn't stupid, she knew something was up. Pair that with my crappy lying skills and she was almost halfway there to figuring out the truth. It's not like Frank constantly abused me. It was few and far between. Mostly verbal abuse, which I could take with ease. It was a mistake on his part that caused my face to bruise, and a mistake on my own that led to my foot injury. I'm sure my torso was covered in bruises, but no one would have the opportunity to see those. The porcelain tub left my ribs feeling tender and painful, but I wasn't about to bring that up. So, how bad is it? Tori grimaced, her face matching Cade and Alex. Just a small fracture. Tori's dad nodded, nothing a boot won't fix. Just gotta let the body heal itself. My visit to the doctors had taken almost all of the time I had. Hanging out with Tori definitely did not go as planned. Alec and Cade drove us back to Tori's house. The ride was silent, something I was thankful for. I refused to let either one of them carry me again, choosing to hobble along at an excruciatingly slow pace. I was officially declaring myself done with the two of them. I'd have to muster up the willpower and hope they didn't manage to get me alone again. Cade could have fun with Grace, and Alec could have fun with whoever else. While my insides burned with jealousy at the thought, I wasn't sticking around as some toy they could screw with. Do you really have to go? Tori pouted. I gave her a small smile. Mel, my mom wants me back before dinner. Another lie. I just wanted to get home before Frank woke up from his drunken stupor. I'd be safely in my room with the door locked by the time he got up from the recliner. Next time you gotta stay for dinner. Tori scolded me, my mom isn't gonna let me hear the end of it once I take you home. Maybe next time I could sleep over. I grinned, thankful she forgot her suspicions for the moment. Mind if we talk to Claire for a moment? Cade stepped forward, and I clenched my teeth together angrily. Tori bowed her head to the side, a really strange move to make. Of course. She murmured, I'll be right back. What was that about? Since when could Tori not stand up for herself? She seemed to do it easily with Grace or anyone else for that matter. What do you guys want? I sighed, leaning against Tori's car. I felt antsy with the two of them around. It felt like the two of them were a drug, and I was just a junkie trying to resist the pull. Sweetheart, you can't truly be mad at us. Cade gave me a breathtaking smile that made me weak at the knees. His smile was almost bashful, full of an unspoken apology. My heart lurched at the sight, making it nearly impossible to resist them. Don't sweetheart me. I growled under my breath, I can and will be mad at the two of you. Goodness! Why was it so hard to stay mad at them? They both looked at me with wide adoring eyes and I had to force my gaze away from theirs. Doll, Cade isn't back with Grace. Alec shook his head, his hand reaching out to turn my face to theirs. It was a stupid rumor courtesy of Grace. Again, my heart thundered. The two of them looked so sincere. It was a sight I had never seen before. But truly, what chance could there be for the three of us? People didn't just share other people. Guys didn't share girls, and twins definitely didn't share a girl. Within another year I would be gone from this town, and I wanted to do that with as little attachment as possible. I could handle leaving friends behind. I wasn't sure I could handle leaving someone I was in love with behind. I planned on leaving without any notice, sneaking out in the middle of the night. I wouldn't be able to do that to the twins, not if this continued. Look, whatever this is between us needs to stop. I forced the words from my mouth, cringing at how weak they sounded. I'm not a toy you can just play with when you're bored. You'll never be a toy to us, sweetheart. Cade murmured with his rough voice, his hand reaching out to play with a piece of my hair. The second I graduate, I'm gone. I frowned at the two of them. I could practically feel my heart splitting in two. I'm not sticking around any longer than necessary. Why would you want to leave, doll? Alec frowned. I hesitated, that's personal. All that matters is I'm done with this. It's not normal to share a girl like this. We've never been normal, sweetheart. Cade's dark eyes burned into my own, honesty pouring through his words. Cade and Alec exchanged a meaningful look, one that made me wonder how many times they had this particular conversation before. You might be done with us, but we aren't done with you, beautiful. Alec murmured, something strange glinting in his eyes. Too many emotions bubbled in my gut, ones that made me question if I was making the right decision. You're ours, Claire. Cade murmured, his dark eyes flashing with concealed emotions. Always will be. Alec chimed in. Both of their eyes were locked on my own, and I swore they could hear my hammering heart. That side of me wanted them desperately, as though my life depended on it. They weren't just two hot guys, they were like a part of me. Tori chose this moment to come walking back outside. While I was grateful for her interrupting before I did something I regretted, I desperately wanted to reach out and touch the twins. We'll see you in school, sweetheart. Cade murmured, and I tensed as the two of them did something completely unexpected. Cade came forward and pressed his lips against my forehead, his rough stubble grazing my skin. Alec was next, doing the same as his brother. All of the stress I had felt at the doctor's had vanished as their lips met my skin. The move felt strangely intimate, and not in the way I was becoming used to. I hopped into Tori's car before they could say another word. They seem to really care about you. Tori murmured as she drove me home. I frowned at her and her strange behavior. What's up with you lately? I grimaced, it's like you can't say no to them. Tori sighed and rubbed her forehead wearily, I can't really explain it but their family kinda owns everything in town. It's not like you can just say no to them. I ignored her flimsy excuse, deciding not to comment. Are you coming to school tomorrow? Tori frowned. Probably not. I gave her a weak smile. I think I'm just gonna take it easy tomorrow. Maybe get some homework done. And you'll be at work on Sunday. Tori raised her eyebrow at me, daring me to flake out. Yes ma'am. I nodded, chuckling as a grin fell on her face. Tori dropped me off at home and I let out a sigh of relief as Frank was passed out cold in the recliner. I grabbed some cold leftovers from the fridge and hobbled up to my room. The first thing I did when we moved in was install a new lock on my bedroom door. You needed a key to get into my bedroom, making it easier for me to come and go. Frank and Melissa couldn't touch any of my stuff while I was gone. I unlocked my door quickly and stepped inside. I picked at my food whilst laying in bed, staring up at the ceiling. I went to bed early that night, determined to sleep through as much of the day as possible. Sleep was a peaceful break from the conflicting emotions that haunted my every move. Chapter 17. I somehow managed to sleep well into Friday and I was grateful for the few extra hours. Alec and Kate's words swam in my head like hungry sharks. They said I belonged to them, and for whatever reason the feeling was mutual. No matter how hard I resisted, some part of me felt they were mine. That the twins belonged to me. I kept to my room most of Friday, only dare venturing out when I knew Melissa was at work. Frank was the biggest risk. Shit would go downhill instantly if he was awake. It must have been my lucky day. As I tiptoed downstairs, Frank was snoring away in his recliner. I managed to grab another box of leftovers from the restaurant and creep back up to my bedroom. I couldn't wait until I managed to get out of this hellhole. Sneaking around my own house was miserable. Constantly tiptoeing around, hoping I didn't step on a landmine. My Friday was spent in complete solitude, and I was thoroughly enjoying it. Either Frank was completely unaware I stayed home from school, or he simply didn't feel like bothering me. Melissa left me alone the entire day, not that she made it her mission to talk to me. I texted back and forth with Tori a little bit, commenting as she gave me a rundown on her day. Autumn and I texted a little as well, but it was mostly about what Autumn planned to wear to the party Saturday. While Autumn had a dress and heels picked out, I planned to take the comfortable route. The remainder of my Friday was spent thinking about Alec and Kate. I wanted to resist but why did I miss them so much? Why did I wish they were with me? I went to bed Friday afternoon, ready for another night of blissful sleep. Sleep was a break from the stress my conflicting emotions were bringing on me. Unfortunately, tonight would provide me with little rest. I woke in the middle of the night, sitting straight up in my bed as my heart hammered away. A deafening crash of lightning had ripped me from my strange dream. This particular dream featured Alec and Kate. I was dreaming about a girl I had never met before. She sure seemed to know me. She was yelling at me, but I felt no danger from her. "Clean your ears out and start listening to me," she yelled. Followed by, "Quit fighting Alec and Kate, stupid. They belong to you." While it was an interesting dream, I couldn't see it changing anything. It was simply a reflection of my subconscious, telling me what I wanted to hear. While I found the intense storms quite beautiful, I wasn't used to them. Moving to Georgia had exposed me to a whole new side of the weather. I was used to the dry heat, and desert-like surroundings. Georgia was so green, so intense with its humidity and storms. I shuffled out of bed and to the bathroom, walking over to the window once I came back to the bedroom. The thick ledge by my window was probably my favorite thing about the small bedroom. I could squeeze right onto the ledge and watch the intense storms. I kept my eyes trained on the forest, half expecting to see the two wolves looking up at me. Admittedly, I was disappointed when I didn't see their familiar dark eyes. I wasn't sure how long I saw on the windowsill. The rain had gradually faded, leaving behind a wet afterglow on the forest and grass. Once my legs and back were stiff from sitting on the windowsill, I trudged back to bed and hoped sleep would finally claim me. I woke sometime in the afternoon. Peeking my head from my bedroom, I crept down the hall and into the bathroom. My shower was a total of 4 minutes, any longer would simply be a risk. Melissa was home from work today, meaning I would have to be extremely careful when leaving my room. I applied the concealer to the fading marks on my neck, courtesy of Alec and Cade. My dinner consisted of a couple granola bars I had left over from a few days ago, and a tall bottle of water. I worked on some overdue homework while lounging around my bedroom. By the time I was finished, it was nearly time for Autumn to pick me up for the party. I wasn't exactly looking forward to said party. I was simply going for Autumn, and the fact that Tori would be there only encouraged me further. I texted Autumn my address and dug through the small pile of clothes I owned. I settled on a thin long-sleeve shirt, jeans, and my usual beat-up sneakers. My boot was large and uncomfortable on my foot, making me hobble unsteadily. Comfort over everything in my opinion. Once I got the text from Autumn telling me she was here, my heart began hammering. I could only hope Melissa and Frank had went to bed early. I opened my door slowly and glanced down the hall, only leaving my room after listening for several seconds. There was no way I was planning on jumping from my window anytime soon. I crept down the stairs and nearly jumped out of my shoe and boot when I noticed Melissa and Frank watching TV. Neither one of them turned to look up at me. I made it to the front door before Melissa dared to look up from the TV. I kept half my body out the front door, shielding my boot from view. Melissa said nothing about me leaving so late at night, which I figured she wouldn't. She simply raised her eyebrow at me and turned her attention back to the TV. I closed the front door behind me with a shaky sigh, and locked it before walking down to Autumn's car. Autumn wasn't lying when she said she planned on wearing a dress. She had on a skin-tight crimson dress, with a pair of black heels to match. Her chocolate hair framed her face in large curls. "You weren't lying when you said you'd dress comfortable." Autumn chuckled, pulling out of the driveway. I shrugged. "I'm probably not going to know anyone there anyway." Autumn's gaze flickered down to the giant boot on my foot. "What happened to you?" "Fell down the stairs." I frowned. I had been telling the lie so much, it almost sounded convincing. Autumn chuckled and shook her head. "Only you could break your foot falling down a flight of stairs." While Tori remained suspicious, Autumn believed my lie with no problem. "Tell me about it." I shook my head. "My clumsiness will be the death of me someday. We'll have to wrap you in bubble wrap to keep you safe." Autumn chuckled. I wasn't sure who was hosting the party, but they didn't live very far from me. We turned into a much nicer neighborhood than what I lived in and pulled up to a large house. The house wasn't as big as Cade and Alex, but it was much bigger than my own. 2 stories and very wide, house sat at the beginning of the neighborhood. I could already hear the thumping music coming from inside. Kids stood around the front yard, and in clusters on the porch. I hobbled from the car and Autumn waited for me patiently. There were so many people inside, no one noticed when Autumn and I strolled in. Many girls were dressed much like Autumn, flashy dresses and short skirts. I had never been to a party before, but I felt underdressed. Autumn's crimson dress hugged her athletic body perfectly and I silently wondered if I'd look that good in a dress. My body wasn't athletic by any means, but my stomach was technically on the slimmer side. I felt beyond awkward trailing after Autumn half the night. This party was truly a testament to my conversation skills, meaning I had none. Around 30 minutes into the party, I trudged into the kitchen. Bottles of liquor were strewn about everywhere. Avoiding anything with alcohol, I poured myself a cup of some soda. I had been looking for Tori for the past half an hour, failing miserably at finding her. Instead of wandering the house, I pulled out the phone she had gifted me. Claire, 10:12 p.m. Hey, where are you? Tori, 10:18 p.m. Home, lol. Where are you? I frowned down at my phone for several minutes. Was she not able to make it? Why hadn't she let me know? Claire, 10:23 p.m. I'm at some party with Autumn. She said you were coming too? Tori, 10:28 p.m. I never heard anything about a party. You sure she meant me? I shoved the phone into my pocket, something unfamiliar and threatening swirling around in my stomach. Maybe Autumn was talking about someone else, and I had thought she meant Tori. This was partially my fault to begin with. I hadn't mentioned the party to Tori at all this week, too wrapped up in my conflicting thoughts. I simply assumed she knew about it already and planned on going. Claire, right? A deep voice caused me to turn. I looked into a pair of bright hazel eyes. A guy around my age was talking to me. Sandy blonde hair sat on his head, long enough to graze his shoulders. Yeah, that's me. I frowned. The guy was definitely my age, but I don't remember ever seeing him before. I'm Carson. The guy grinned, showing a perfect smile. I'm in your first period class. Oh. My mouth popped open. I had never noticed him before. Sorry about that. I never noticed before. It's not a problem, beautiful. Carson grinned. Normally butterflies would swarm in my stomach at the thought of talking to a guy as hot as Carson, but this time I felt nothing. Anxiety was still swirling in my stomach, and at the moment I just wanted to talk to Autumn. I gotta find my friend real quick. I mumbled awkwardly, it was nice talking to you, Carson. I grabbed my cup of soda and walked back out to the living room, the last place I had seen Autumn. Autumn was talking to a group of people. 3 girls and 2 guys to be more exact. I tapped on her shoulder timidly, nearly cringing when their conversation came to a halt. Hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I raised my voice over the thumping music. Confusion flickered on Autumn's face and she nodded. We walked over to the dining room, which had far less people than the rest of the house. What's wrong? Autumn frowned, noticing the look of worry on my face. You told me Tori was coming, right? I pursed my lips at her. Autumn nodded. Yeah, I talked to her about the party last week. I texted her and she said she never heard anything about a party. I frowned. Realization flashed in Autumn's eyes. Shit. I might have forgotten to mention it to her. Did you want me to take you home? I could see the reluctance in Autumn's eyes, and I instantly felt guilty. Here I was practically freaking out that Tori wasn't here. I could survive another hour or 2. Just long enough for Autumn to have some fun before she took me home. I drank the rest of the soda in my cup and shook my head. No, it's all right. A relieved grin came over Autumn's face. You're the best, Claire. I've been talking to this guy over there, and I think he's into me. I chuckled along with Autumn, glancing over at the guy she was talking about. He was nothing special in my eyes, strutting the bad boy look as best he could. I couldn't help but compare it to Alec and Cade. The guy was a kid playing dress-up compared to the twins. My stomach was still swirling though, despite my decision to stay at the party. I'm gonna head to the bathroom. I nodded. I'll catch up with you later. Autumn nodded and gave me another grin, walking back to the living room as I trudged up the stairs. My stomach wasn't just swirling now, it was flip-flopping in my torso. The feeling made me nauseous and a little dizzy. I managed to find the bathroom with little issues and closed the door behind me. Splashing cool water on my face did nothing to make me feel better. Any sort of movement made my head swim and my vision blur. Something was seriously wrong. I was having difficulty forming coherent thoughts. My mind was only able to think of one thing at a time. I yanked the phone from my pocket and stared at the shifting screen. The letters on the brightened screen were floating and swirling around my head. I could vaguely make out Tori's name, but everything else was a blur. Tori, 10:30 p.m. Do you need me to come get you? Autumn never said anything about a party. Are you all right? Claire, answer me. Send me the address. Hello? I barely managed to shove the phone back in my pocket when another one-track thought came to mind. I needed to find Autumn, fast. I flung open the bathroom door and walked out, but whatever was happening began to get worse. I couldn't walk straight, and it was becoming harder and harder to stay on my feet. The entire hallway was tilting, swirling into one big jumbled mess. I couldn't remember which way I had come from, which way led to the stairs. I picked a direction and stumbled down the hall, my hand grazing against the wall in a pitiful attempt to keep myself upright. My leg buckled from under me, and I fell towards the floor. I got you. A familiar voice murmured, lifting me from the ground. Chapter 18. I got you. A familiar voice murmured, lifting me from the ground. I felt weightless in Carson's arms. My mind was swimming numbly, struggling to form any kind of coherent thoughts. All I knew was something was desperately wrong with me. My limbs refused to respond, and if they did, it was incredibly delayed. Carson carried me somewhere. Sights and sounds I had experienced multiple times were now completely foreign. I was thrown on something soft. My mind couldn't comprehend what it was. My fingers twisted in the soft material slowly, winding and unwinding. She didn't even notice. Carson's voice rang out, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. I could hear the words clearly, but I couldn't understand the meanings. In the midst of the absolute cloudiness of my brain, something else was happening inside of me. At first it felt like little pinpricks. Like something hitting against a brick wall. The feeling was like an itch inside my head. It was the only thing I could focus on at the moment. Quit ignoring me, stupid. Ugh, what have you gotten yourself into? Some part of my brain was having its own running dialogue. Should have listened sooner, gotta do everything around here. A giggle left my lips. I was having an argument with myself. The itching feeling grew stronger while the brick wall grew weaker. Something began rushing through me. Something warm and potent was coursing through my veins. Like a gulp of hot chocolate after playing out in the snow all day. My mind became clearer, and the details around me became much sharper. I was laying on a bed, and Carson stood only a few feet away. He was talking very animatedly on the phone. Carson. I mumbled, what happened? Shit. Carson hissed under his breath, and I wasn't sure how I was able to hear it. I could hear someone coming up the stairs, walking down the hall. My mind was beginning to clear, but it was taking longer for my body to get the message. The bedroom door opened and two people stepped inside. My stomach clenched and anger swam through me. The anger felt misplaced, like it wasn't coming from me. Grace and a dark-haired girl came into the room. A malicious look on both of their faces. Grace. My voice was clear, confusion swirling in my words. The smug look on Grace's face slipped just an inch as she turned to Carson. I told you to give her enough. Grace spat angrily, can't do a simple job. I gave her exactly what you told me to. Carson snapped, I don't know why it's wearing off already. It took all of my energy to sit up from the bed. My movements were slow and groggy. It felt like my mind was wide awake while my body was asleep. Their words had cold fear rushing through me. Tori. Her name left my lips, feeling like a lifeline. Tori had sent me multiple texts. She could easily be on her way. Tori. Grace spat, don't tell me that is here. Grace turned to her dark-haired friend, go get the other one. Grace's friend left without a word, and finally Grace turned her attention on me. Her blue eyes were glinting maliciously. I had never looked into the eyes of a psychopath before, but I assumed this is what they'd look like. There was no light behind her ocean blue eyes, just an emptiness that had me shaking with fear. Poor little Claire. Grace spat, you moved to the wrong town with the wrong girl. I've never done anything to you. I pointed out, my voice shaking. Oh, but you have. Grace's smile was serpent-like, you think they see something in you? They see an easy who can't say no. They. I paused, the twins. While everything was beginning to make sense, that didn't stop the fear from continuing to wash over me. Grace had that unhinged look in her eye, a look that said she'd go to any lengths for what she wanted. Who else, Claire? Grace's voice was soft, her eyes murderous. I'm going to make sure that no one wants you after this. No one at all. Got her. Grace's friend came back in the room, a familiar face in tow. Autumn. My mouth dropped. Too many emotions were running through me. Half of which felt like they didn't belong. Sorry, Claire. Autumn replied with a straight face. Any familiarity was wiped clean. Shut up. Grace hissed, did Tori come with her? No, Autumn shook her head, I did as you said. Tori never knew about the party. Good. Grace turned her reptilian smile back on me. That means we won't be interrupted. Carson leaned against the dresser, a silent player in Grace's twisted game. You're going to stay away from the twins, Claire. Grace spoke, her voice crystal clear, hell, drop out of school if you have to. I don't really care. Before I could bite back or reply, something hard slammed into the side of my face. I was knocked back onto the bed with a thud. Black spots danced across my vision and my face pounded ruefully. My vision cleared and I locked eyes with a smiling Grace. Her fist was moved back, aiming for another hit. I couldn't understand how she was so strong. Grace was thin, with little muscle on her body. She shouldn't be this strong. Another blow slammed into me. A sharp pain pulsed along my lip, following a spurt of something warm and metallic tasting. Stop! The word was a garbled whimper as it left my lips. My eye throbbed, and I could feel the skin around it swelling. Autumn stood across the room, her eyes looking anywhere other than at me. Grace on the other hand grinned, admiring her handiwork. You won't tell them about this either, Claire. Grace murmured, getting close to my busted face. Trust me, I have no problem getting rid of you. Permanently. I'll stay away. I whimpered, nodded my head profusely. Nothing was worth this. Nothing was worth the pain, the torment, or the fear. If she wanted me out of their life, I'd do just that. The look in her eyes terrified me, and I knew she'd enjoy getting rid of me. Surviving until I graduated was no longer a waiting game. My frantic brain was trying to come up with options, anything to get me out of this town. Good. Grace murmured, I'm glad we have an understanding, Claire. A strangled gasp left my lips when Grace turned to leave the room, her dark-haired friend and Autumn beginning to follow. I tried to assess the damages done to me. My eye was swelling, my lip was definitely busted. I'd need a mirror to see the full extent. Grace turned and said something to Carson. I didn't think it was possible for me to become more afraid, but I was wrong. Grace was telling the truth when she said she'd ruin me. She was staying true to her word. Have fun with her, Carson. Grace murmured, a single manicured hand placed on his shoulder. I tried to turn and lift myself from the bed, but my movements were still staggered. Whatever drug Carson slipped me was wearing off, but not nearly fast enough. This couldn't be happening. What kind of high school girl went to these lengths? What made her think she could get away with doing something like this? This wasn't the kind of stuff that happened in real life, just movies or violent books. Grace, Autumn, and the dark-haired girl left the room. Carson stared at me, something burning in his gaze. His eyes racked down my body slowly. I felt disgusted with myself and what was done to me. She FD your face up pretty bad. Carson murmured, a smirk forming on his face. But I can just look away. It doesn't bother me. Carson, don't I opened my mouth to plead, to beg with him. SHH Carson cooed, the same cruel look Grace had was gleaming in his eyes. It'll be easier for you if you don't struggle. Carson knelt onto the bed and grabbed onto my legs, tugging me towards him. My movements might have been sluggish, but fight or flight kicked in with a violent crash. I used all of the energy I had and kicked my legs out, praying it was enough. Going to put up a fight? Carson chuckled, good. Makes it more fun. Carson was much stronger than me, and my sluggish movements did little to hurt him. The itching feeling in my head was stronger than ever, setting my teeth on edge. It felt like someone constantly poking at the side of your head, but when you turned no one was there. Let me through, you. A pissed-off voice filtered through my head. I must have been going crazy, that or the drugs Carson gave me left me mentally unhinged. Fight Claire, I can only do so much if you don't let me through. Carson's hands fumbled with the button on my jeans when a surge of energy rushed through me. I sat up with a force I didn't know I had. Carson moved his fist back, landing a solid blow to my face before I could throw my arms up in defense. Carson's strength matched Grace's, leaving me dazed after a single punch. Focus. Everything sharpened in what felt like an instant. I could hear the people downstairs, their insignificant little conversations. The music thumped and pulsed, carrying a fast-paced beat. The smell of cologne, alcohol, and sweat was in the air. Carson continued fumbling with my jeans, finally getting the button undone and the zipper down. No. The word was ripped from my mouth and I brought my knee forward. The goal was to hit Carson in his sensitive bits, but I aimed too high. Instead I managed to knee him in the gut. For just a split second, I froze. Fear surged through me. I was terrified I didn't hit him hard enough, that I didn't have the strength to cause any actual damage. Get up, Claire. I rolled off the bed, my movements becoming easier and easier. The strength that was running through me made me move much faster than normal. Carson groaned and clutched his stomach, frozen long enough for me to take action. Without thinking, I grabbed the thick lamp that sat on the table and forced it down on Carson's head with all the force I had left. The lamp base was metal, I learned. The sound reverberated off of Carson's skull. He crumpled to the ground, a gruff moan leaving his lips. I didn't take the time to assess whether or not he was knocked out. Fight or flight mode was in full effect, and right now it was telling me to get out. I ripped the bedroom door open and sped down the hall. Pictures on the wall rushed by in a blur of color. I couldn't remember ever running this fast. The fear coursing through my veins kept me from appreciating it fully. I didn't bother looking for Grace or Autumn. I wasn't looking for anyone. I stayed clear of the living room. Once I reached the bottom of the stairs, I turned and darted out the back door. I had a vague idea of how to get home, remembering the way we took when Autumn was driving. I ran through the backyard and jumped a fence. Circling around the side of the neighbor's house, I ended up on the sidewalk. The house I had just fled from was only 50 feet away. Cars were lined up down the block. My thoughts were racing at 100 miles an hour, but I could understand each one clearly. Getting home, that was the only thing I needed to concentrate on. I darted down the sidewalk, my gaze continuously flickering back to the house. My foot was howling in agony, screaming and begging for me to stop, but I couldn't. My left eye was nearly swelled shut, but I didn't care. I let the pain and fear of getting caught push me farther. A strangled scream left my lips when I slammed into someone and their hands wrapped tightly around my forearms. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.